Commander Riker doesn't have any old memories that he'd like to share with an audience. Keiko O'Brien tastes paintbrush juice in her imagination, and Klingons do not allow themselves to be probed. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we are doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation Season 5, Episode 12, Violations, although I misspelled it. It says Violations, like in French. Story by Sherry Goodhart, T. Michael, and Pamela Gray. Teleplay by Pamela Gray and Jerry Taylor. May have heard of her. Directed by Robert Weimer. This was February 1st, 1992. Where were you? How you doing today, Sirach?
February 1st, 1991?
Two.
I'm doing great.
Yeah.
I'm doing great.
All right. Everybody, please make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon for notifications, and if you're listening in, give us a 5-star rating and a nice review. We'd really appreciate that. And please go visit us at patreon.com/the7th-rule to support the show and make sure that we're still alive next week. Otherwise, we turn off the lights, we unplug the refrigerator, and the show will continue, but we'd love to have you. Anyway, so Sirach,
Yeah.
it was a fun one, huh? What do you think?
Yeah. It was
maybe not fun.
Not fun. I wouldn't say fun. Only one person looked like they were having fun in this episode.
Great. Can I just say that guy was like that's an episode that's kind of sticking with me because I usually watch it right before we record, but instead I watched it like 2 days ago when I had time, and I'm still thinking about it. I'm just like, what kind of a creep like invades your memories to either have some kind of sexual pleasure or to torture you by using your memories into some kind of twisted nightmare? I don't even know. What do you think?
Yeah. I thought it was an interesting idea creatively. I mean,
Yeah.
For one, it was really good casting for this main villain guy who just had the looks, that look on his face, it's like there's that guilty, smug, hiding something, he had all of the characteristics of a scumbag creep. So fantastic job casting with that, because he did pull that off.
Nailed it.
He nailed it to the point where I was really disgusted by this guy, and that's what made it uncomfortable to watch because of the level of violation that I was watching. And that's where it becomes something like conceptually the idea of somebody able to essentially invade your memories with their own presence, right? That is something that's interesting conceptually for science fiction. I think it worked well in this episode. It kept my attention the whole time. I was kind of, like, what's going on here? And, the episode started off with Keiko. I was happy to see Keiko in the opening scene, get a chance to do some acting, some real acting.
Yeah.
I thought she was good in that as well. Watching her animate the scene with the cup in her hand and tasting and doing that whole kind of reenactment of the memory, I thought was well done by her. So
Yeah.
it opened for me with some intrigue. I was like, what's going on here? We got a Keiko open. Okay. And then who are these Yulian, telepathic historians? So that was cool, because I like to see alien races. I like to see variety of aliens that have different abilities. And to me, as a telepathic historian, it sounded like a great, like, oh, this is cool. Let's, we could use more of that. I could get on board with that. And then when you see how the abilities, corrupted, then you start to question it. But yeah, I like the idea of that.
Yeah, I really like the thought, what you just touched on, telepathic historians. Anytime they give you a new concept, you're like, oh, Telepathic historians. I like that. That's interesting. They kind of have their own record banks, their own jobs, their own, culture and history. You could definitely see something there. And I like that the three Yulians were different in nature. There's nothing worse than when the entire race is homogenous. They all act the same, they all think the same, they all talk the same. They just look slightly different, because it's different actors. But these three had different personalities, which was cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the best part of this episode was the creativity and the concept itself. Like you mentioned, just the idea that somebody could be kind of welcomed into your memories, but then could twist them and invade your memories in such a sadistic way, right? The guy seems like a sadist, but that was just such an interesting concept that I've never thought of. I never thought like, what if there's an alien race, that's telepathic, that can help you dig up your memories, they can see your memories, but then they can insert themselves into that memory. That's very creative. Whoever came up with that out of the three story buys deserves a lot of credit. Also, something
Yes.
that I just noticed a few minutes ago was that all of the writing credits are ladies. Now, there's one called T. Michael. We don't know.
Yeah.
But Pamela Gray, Jerry Taylor, Sherry Goodhart's. So I wonder who it was out of those, Sherry, T. Michael, or Pamela Gray, that really kind of came up with that nugget that everything sprang from. It's interesting.
Yeah, I can't say, but I do think the idea is great because once again, when I think of telepathy, I think of it more in the way that it's used in Counselor Troy's, usage of it, basically sensing emotions, being able to, you know, um, feel and detect whether somebody is being truthful, and maybe even I think of telepathy as maybe reading your mind or essentially communicating telepathically. So putting words in your mind, like being able to communicate without saying anything. The way we see Troy and her mom talking, right, when they're together and they're not actually moving their lips, but we can hear them talking to each other. So we see, I think of telepathy used more conventionally in those ways, where two people are talking with each other without moving their lips, or somebody's reading the other person's mind, but not so much as in being able to visualize memories, recreate memories, and invade the memory itself with your presence. That's a whole nother level and twist to telepathy that I don't think I've ever really thought about before. Not that I sit around and think of different applications of telepathy, but I watched this. This was a great idea. It reminded me of there was the movie Inception with Leonardo DiCaprio. I think it was DiCaprio, where he was invading people's dreams to find out their secrets.
Really? Is that? I never saw it. I did see Conception, though. That was a. No, but I never
we all
saw that one.
Conception. If you're listening to this, you've been concepted. So,
true.
So, but the thing is, so that idea was also in a movie called Dreamscape a long time ago. This was like an old 80s movie. I used to love this movie. I don't know, as a kid, it was one of my, cool movies to watch. I think it was called Dreamscape. And it was about similar to Conception. It was about, fighting and invading people's dreams. I think Inception was more about trying to get secrets from people. So you found out where they, what their ATM PIN code was or where they hid their valuables. There it is, Dreamscape. That's
Looks
a
almost
throwback
like
movie right there.
Indiana Jones, almost.
Yeah, the artistry on the for the artwork for the movie does look like Indiana Jones. Looks like they copied it exactly.
Wow. Cool.
What does the bio for Dreamscape say? What does the write up on it say?
Let me see.
The descriptive line. Because I thought it was about.
A man who can enter and manipulate people's dreams, nailed it, is recruited by a government agency to help cure the president of the United States of his nightmares.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's crazy. So he was able to infiltrate your dream essentially, and so it was a cool movie, very good. I think it had like a train climax scene where they were able to transform into so many different things because it's the dream state. But anyways, that's where I've heard similar ideas that to this, but not quite exactly the same, and certainly not used for the nefarious purpose of uh, kind of like sexual violation. You know what I
right.
mean? Where that part, that's where I really felt the most violated about this idea, to
Of
be honest with you.
course. Yeah, no, I mean, that was hideous. And I
Yeah.
like that at the end, the Yulians flat out called it rape. Like it
Yeah.
would have been ugly if they say, oh, well, it's if there was some kind of defense of it or some kind of discussion about it, that they themselves were like, this kind of rape was outlawed 200 years ago, and they just like flat out like call it what it is, say this was done before, we don't do it anymore, it's
Yeah.
totally against our code of conduct, put it in that box, that's what it is, and address it for what it is. So I thought that was cool that they actually,
Acknowledge that.
yeah, and there wasn't a discussion, that they just said, that they cut to the chase. That was good. Because you always worry about something made, 25 years ago. You never know what they're going to do with that, how they're going to
Yeah.
address things. But maybe that's what happens when you have like an all female group of writers. They're like, let's just call this thing what it is. There's no discussion here. So that was cool. And I also found it interesting that there was a twist that I was not expecting. Like, I vaguely remembered this episode. And all I
Yeah.
remember about the episode was Jev, the main villainous, mustache twirling guy. But there was a twist in which, when he's visiting Deanna Troy's memory, he's able to implant his dad into that. So then we as the audience then think, oh shoot, was it his dad the whole time, but was like framing him?
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that's what I thought. I thought, oh, wow, what a twist. His dad was framing him the whole time. We've discovered it turns out it's his dad. Whoa, crazy. But then we find out, no, they didn't even explain it. They just said, oh, no, it turns out it's him. And we can just kind of figure out, oh, obviously he can implant somebody else's imagery. He can change anything. But that was a good twist. I don't know if that got you, did it? Got me.
It did get me. It was a great twist. That's what I thought was great about this episode. For one, I didn't know the answer, right? So sometimes you see an episode, it starts off, and you kind of like, I know where this is gonna go. This is pretty predictable. This is one of those, Alexander comes over and Worf has to be a dad, and then he tells him, off you go. To kind of like, where it's gonna end at some point. This one, it gave you a sense because they did highlight the suspicion of this character from the beginning, so they almost gave
Yes, you're
away.
right.
They gave away that it's about this guy, right? From the beginning, they kept giving him solo close up shots where he would look mysteriously over, and these kind of weird looks that he was getting. So they let the audience in on the fact that no, this guy's a weirdo, because you didn't get those vibes, for example, from the mother Tellurian, Yulian character,
No.
right? She was very sweet, and she felt genuine. She felt honest, and she kept saying, for example, "Honey, you can't read people's minds without their permission and stuff," because even the dad was technically crossing lines of protocol with his powers, right? He was open about it, but he was still slightly abusing his abilities because
Yeah.
he was he called Riker out, for example. He's like, "Hey, Riker, I got some memory. You got some memories I want to talk about."
Yeah, you got some memories swirling around in your head at all times. That's why you're smirking on the bridge. And then when Geordi says, "You got any memories you want to? Any memories down deep or something?" He's like, "None that I want to share with people."
Not with this audience.
Yeah, that's what it was. None with this audience. So that was definitely a nice Riker line. Obviously,
but it also shows that this guy's using his powers against Riker too, without his, so there's already a violation.
He was also coercing. The fact that he was trying, he's like, "Hey, come on, you want to try? Just come on. We've never had any issues." I was like, dude, no means no, man. Like, calm down, guy.
Yeah, and he was doing that with everybody. Like he was forcing himself on Geordi. He kept asking everybody, "What about you? What about you, Dr. Crusher? You look like you might want to talk about something." And that's also that was a sign for me that they're willing to cross over certain lines, even ethical lines. It seemed like the mom character, the elderly woman character, was the only one who was strict about her morality and ethics. Right? She was like, "No, you can't do that. That's not right." And so she kept her level ethical and morality throughout the whole episode. It was the other characters, the male characters, that were like, first the father being like, "Come on, you want to do it, let's Jack."
And he probed Crusher too. He even said "You're thinking about that first kiss, aren't you?"
Yeah,
it's a little invasive.
Yeah. So I just felt like right away they let us know, okay, these people have disability and they're willing to use it in a slightly inappropriate manner. That's what I got from the opening scene, right? And I also felt like the crew wasn't, or they were off put by it. They were like, "Nah, I'm not sure about that."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that there's a lot of gray area. They kind of not too worried about crossing lines here or there. But one thing that kind of took me by surprise, and I thought of you in this instance, was when at the beginning, and you kind of alluded to it a little earlier, they have their little open where, sometimes it's 2 minutes, sometimes it's 7 minutes, but there's usually like a big twist, like searching for survivors. There are no survivors, Captain. And then the music swells and then it goes into the opening theme, right? Big, oh no, or the Klingons are coming or something like that. This one, do you remember what the little cliffhanger thing was? They're like, "Oh, this is fun, this is interesting," and they walk away, and it just showed Jev sit down and be like, and that was it. They're like, "Oh, there's a guy
thinking."
Yeah, but he looks a little fish. There's just the fact that they put him there with the end of the scene and the music swelling just leads us to believe, oh, there's something with this guy. I got to watch this guy. This is the sinister guy. But there was no twist. He didn't even say anything like, I'm going to do bad things, or like, there's just nothing. I was like, that happens I feel like this only happened one other time, and I don't remember which episode, or like maybe in like the second or third season, where it was just kind of like there was no twist, there was no cliffhanger, there was no
build up for a big thing. Yeah, because it was like, oh, Keiko thought it was tea, but it was really paintbrush water.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay. Mystery solved. Her grandmother used to paint. Okay,
I think she called it called her Obachan.
Oh yeah, her Obachan.
I don't know.
Obachan. Yeah. Either way, it was like, a chipped. I was like, okay, I'm writing down chipped cup.
I know. Oh, there's something. Oh, sharp edge. Okay, interesting. I mean, I'm gonna cut. Yeah. I'm gonna really figure out the clues here. And no, there was nothing else there.
There was nothing there. And here I am writing down chip on her cup, and I wrote down Keiko's got a chip on her shoulder, but on her cup.
Yeah, and then suddenly she just remembered everything. It all came swirling back, and Daddy-O is the good guy,
but that was
Tarman.
actually interesting because I don't know if that's ever something that you've ever had conversation about or discussion about, and that is, would you undergo hypnotism to recall a memory? Because I've always thought about, like, there's some memories that I have that I would like to revisit and have some clarity on, because some stuff is fuzzy and vague. Not that it's like a traumatic event or anything, but it's just, for example, I had some really crazy dreams, and I'd like to know. I just can't remember certain parts of the dream, and I'd like to know
fun, yeah.
What was that dream about. And I don't even know if you can recall a memory from a dream. You know what I mean? I know you can. Maybe you can recall a memory of a real life lived experience, like, when you were in fourth grade and you were at that track meet. But can you recall when you were in fourth grade and you had a dream that you know what I mean?
What's funny about that? That actually happened to me once. It was, I'd say, 4, 5, 6 years ago. And I was awake, and it was like, I think it was still morning though. And suddenly I remembered, sometimes you remember a dream, right? I remembered a dream that I had when I was 5 years old and did not remember at any point between 5 and that moment right then. Not even the morning that I woke up as a 5-year-old from that dream. Because you know what I mean? Like, usually you wake up and you remember that dream. That dream was gone in deep in my mind. Didn't think about it, didn't even know about it, even the morning that I woke up of having that dream for my entire life. And then one day I was like, but I knew it was when I was 5. Like, I could pinpoint it because I knew whatever it was like, oh, I was most likely 5. It was like kindergarten. Like, for some reason, I just was able to know exactly when that was in time. I don't remember it now, but it was pretty crazy. And it was like vivid. It was like, whoa, this was the coolest thing ever, And then it was gone again. Oh, well, I don't know if it was a great dream, but that was an interesting thing. So sometimes, weird stuff like that happens. We remember dreams and then we forget them and then we remember
so
them
it's
again.
in your memory bank. So that's an interesting
it's in there
thing
forever.
That you're talking about. Your dreams, whether you remember them or not, are somewhere in a memory bank stored in your brain. Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
We have everything in our brain in storage. It's just accessing it,
Because I don't remember dreams. I very rarely remember dreams.
Really?
But when I do remember dreams, there's some kind of, poignancy to it. Mm-hmm. I just won't remember a stupid dream where I'm just like riding around and go to Jack in the Box or something crazy. But it has to be something. Dream. It's a fun dream. But it has to be, something poignant in it to make me remember it.
I'm such a laugher that sometimes I have just like hilarious dreams where I wake up with tears in my eyes from laughing so hard. Like, I'm literally laughing myself awake. I'm like, what a great way to start the day. I'm starting the day laughing my freaking French ass off. And I'm like, but then when I think about it, I'm like, it wasn't that funny, but in my dream, I am laughing. Oh boy, that was so fun. Anyway, that's a fun way to start the day. So sometimes just a stupid dream. Anyway, I don't know how we got on the subject of dreams, but everything is stored.
Well,
like, we have everything. And people can do like hypnotism and things like that and really have you retrieve these dreams. And that's what it kind of looked like was going on there. Actually, whoa, we got to jump to our break. I almost forgot about that. Okay. We'll be right back on the 7th Rule.
Up and away.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the 7th Rule with Sirach Lofton.
Hello.
All right. Here are the trivioids of the week. But they were not weak. The Enterprise is conveying a delegation of Yulians to Caldra 4. Keiko O'Brien tastes paintbrush juice in her imagination. Was it imagination or recollection? I don't know. I felt like she was just kind of imagining. Beverly is thinking about her first childhood kiss. Commander Riker doesn't have any old memories that he'd like to share with an audience. Geordi remembers everything about when he got his first pet, a Circassian cat. Klingons do not allow themselves to be probed. Counselor Troy, stop me if you've heard this one. Counselor Troy cannot read Yulians. And Iracine is always accompanied by a severely decreased histamine count. Can we just take a moment to talk about Counselor Troy? Once again, conveniently, I can't read Yulians. Otherwise, this episode is like 12 seconds long. They show up and she goes, Captain, I sense they're hiding something. Oh, we better quarantine them. We better. Okay. Oh, yes, they're very bad. Let's hold. Okay, we'll just carry them along. Nobody do anything with them. Okay, cool. Done. Executive
Somebody
producer
out
Gene
there
Roddenberry
watching needs to put together the full list of all the things that Counselor Troy cannot do. Can't read through metal debris from planet surfaces.
You know what the title should be? It should be Counselor Troy is psychic, except, and then just a bunch of clips of I can't read Yulians. Oh, I can't do this. Oh, he's too far away. Oh, his mind is too complicated. Oh, I'm too tired. Oh, my nail broke. Oh, I'm my elbow hurts. Oh, these guys are too angry. I can't say, like it's just 176 episodes of excuses. Of writer excuses where they're like, we can't use her special powers or it ruins the episode. Then why give her the special power?
I mean, she couldn't even use it on herself. Because I thought for a fact when she woke up from the coma, she was going to say, "Oh, I sense that I'm feeling discomfort from this guy." Okay, that's what I thought was going to happen. I thought when she woke up from the coma that Picard was going to ask her to do the reading, and then when she walked into the room and saw that guy's face, that it would trigger her memory, and that this is the guy that I remember in my own memory of what happened, right? So she doesn't have to use the power on anything else except for herself to recall her own recollection of the events, and she couldn't remember that either.
One thing she did do well, though, was a couple good karate chops. I mean, I felt a little.
I was proud of her.
I felt a little vindicated that she's like, well, I wasn't able to figure out it was you immediately, but
I know it's happening again.
But I did give you a couple good punches that made me feel a lot. I'm sure she felt better punching the shit out of that guy.
Not only the punches, but she did realize it was happening again. Yeah. So she that recognition was there, as opposed to like, let me just fall for the loop cycle again. She did recognize that. But I was happy she got to kick his ass a little bit, because I felt like he needed some of that right there, a high dosage of that.
What about when Worf literally just walks in and goes, he just drops him. That was so cool. He just walks right in, quick left hand, boom, right to the face.
Well, how right was Worf? I was laughing when he said the line in the beginning, right? What did he say? Klingons do not allow themselves to be probed. The way he put a pause there too, because in typical Worf, Michael Dorn fashion.
He was also right when he said maybe we should quarantine these guys.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I don't know if that would stop anything, but like basically he was saying we need to put these guys on lockdown. I don't trust them. And Picard's like, that feels kind of, I don't know if that's good diplomatically. That's not good diplomacy, is just locking these guys. It's a bad look. And we value the Yulians. As you know, they're in almost every episode. They're important trade partners. We need these guys. We don't want to piss them off.
Yeah, Worf was right again. And he gets shut down a lot, but he ends up being right a lot. He was right about being probed, and that ended up being the case. I just felt like, watching the trauma play out by Marina Sirtis in her performance in this episode.
Yeah.
I thought she was fantastic, because she really played that traumatic moment very well. I thought she, the whole "get off of me," the way she portrayed that with her facial expressions and body language, really made me feel uncomfortable. and so I thought she did a great job in kind of depicting what that scenario would look like. Also think that Dr. Crusher did a great job in her scene of being violated by this.
I thought so too. Yeah, she was
I
really
thought
good.
she was great because she played the terror, she played the horror, she played the fear very well. So I think performance wise, we got some amazing performances from Marina Sirtis,
Yeah,
as well as from Dr. Crusher in this
yeah,
film, Gates McFadden.
yeah. So here's a question for you. What was this thing on Picard's face? What was the story there? Like in the so presumably, I
Yeah.
mean, the only thing I could think is that maybe because that was when Dr. Crusher's husband, Jack Crusher, passed away or was killed on the away mission. So Picard was leading that away mission, if I remember correctly. So the only thing I can think of is maybe that's an injury from the away mission, that killed Jack Crusher, also busted his face. And so this is just like something that's healing up. That's the only thing I could think of. But it was just kind of weird to see
Uh,
that.
so was that Jack Crusher in the bed? That
Yeah,
was that. That's
yeah.
who that was. Okay, because they didn't tell me that. I mean, how
No, but I mean, I just kind of had
we
to
assume that?
assume, which is
Okay.
he's saying, don't remember him like this. And she's like, no, I have to see. It's got to be her husband. Picard has hair, so we know it was several years back. And we know the story is that I believe he was either leading the away mission or maybe he wasn't leading the away mission. He made the order that Jack Crusher followed that led to his death. That's why he forever feels guilty.
Um,
So there's some kind of attack. I don't remember if we know the details, some kind of attack. So that's why I'm thinking this was the aftermath of that. Picard has an injury. Jack Crusher is dead. Picard has to tell Beverly. Beverly says she wants to see the body. And he's like, dude, you don't want to the last thing you see of your husband is him all mangled. And she's like, no, I have to see. I'm a doctor and I'm weird. But that's what she wanted to
yeah,
see.
yeah, that was a great scene.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to highlight the director Robert Weimer in this episode.
Yeah.
He did some stuff stylistically in those dream memory recollection sequences.
Weird camera angles, man.
Weird camera angles, a lot of camera movement, and a lot of repeat of stuff. So it looked like you were seeing the same sequence over again and like repetition, kind of in this filmed in a way in which I believe how dreams actually play out. They don't have that same continuity as, how time elapses in our conversation or in just everyone's normal day-to-day kind of life. Dreams kind of play out where it feels like flashes of things that you see. It doesn't have this consistency of you walk through the door, you open the door, then you walk over here. It's just like I was here, I saw this, and next thing I know I was flying, and and it's like the recollection of dreams was well portrayed in this um, episode by the director, I thought, because it does have that kind of, unclear, not defined cut and crispness to it. It has that kind of weirdness to it where it doesn't, the angles are different, the lighting is always a little bit off. It just seems something's different in dream states. And I thought he captured that well.
Yeah, and we keep using the term dream, but there wasn't
Yeah,
really a
but
dream. It
yeah,
was more like a memory, but
like a
like
memory.
a
Yeah.
lucid dream is what it kind of felt like. It was
Yeah.
because certainly when we're awake and conscious, we don't have these uncontrollable thoughts that we can't, that are just swirling in our head. So it was kind of like this weird dream state. So that was really, really weird. It
Yeah,
wasn't
and that's how
100% clear what was
dreams
going
and
on there.
memories to me kind of are similar. So when I
Mm-hmm.
recall something, if I'm thinking of something, even let's say, hey, talk about Star Trek, your time on Deep Space Nine. it doesn't come to me in this recorded linear thing where it's like, oh, on day one, this happened, and on day two, it doesn't. The recollection of it doesn't happen that way. It's like, oh, okay, let me think about it. Yeah, stage four, I remember doing that, and yeah, I remember shooting basketball here. I remember David Livingston's done. Like all these weird memories just kind of come to your head at the same time, and you
Yeah.
filter through it. So it doesn't have a continuity of the linear motion of time. That's what I
Yeah.
meant.
Also, I thought that there was actually a really nice point at the end. Let me see if I can find it in my notes here. Um, and it's something that I've thought of many times before, which is humans don't evolve nearly as quickly as technology and society and civilization does. For example, in 100 years, society has evolved so much, and in 1,000 years, and in 2,000 years, to where we know you're not supposed to kill people. You're not supposed to do this. You're not supposed to do that. This is wrong. You got to treat people this way. There's just so many things that we have learned as a society, as a civilization. We have laws. We have rules. You wipe your feet before you walk in the door, like literally everything, right? However, humans still have, there are still murderers out there, even though we know it's wrong. There's still rapists out there, even though we know it's wrong. There are still people that do horrible things to other people, even though we all know, and we agree as a society that this is wrong. Why is that? Well, because society has evolved to where we understand things, and so has technology. But humans genetically are not evolving that quickly. We still have these horrible impulses. We still have predatory impulses or deceptive, deceitful. We still are driven by the ego. We're still driven, to be assholes or to be jealous. Like that's going to take 1,000,000 years to evolve out of us. What we should ask Muhammad Noor. Muhammad, when is sadism going to evolve out of humans? Because that it's just going to take forever. So even though our society has accepted that all these things are wrong and bad, it's not going to just evolve out of us as quickly as the acknowledgement that our brains understand that it's wrong. And so Picard mentioned something like that. He says that seed of violence remains within each of us. That violence is capable of consuming each of us. And it's interesting that they mentioned that, which is like, yeah, we all still have that caveman urge. We all still have that Cro-Magnon violence. We all still have, all the things that make shitty people shitty people. Most of us are able to control it, or don't even really think about it too much. But it's all in there. It's all in our DNA. It's all what made us survive as humans for thousands of years, or 4 million years, or whatever it is. Anyway, I thought that was a good point that was brought up, and I was happy about it.
Yeah, I think you answered the question just as you posed it, and I think that is those characteristics of those the savage side of us, of our human nature, are there as survival tools.
Mm-hmm. It's
And so
evolution.
I think inbred in us, in order to survive, you had to be cutthroat, you had to kill, you had to do this, you had to conquer, you had to fight. And so I think some of those things are part of the genetic code in that way of just survival. The question becomes then, when are we going to be at a point in which survival doesn't require that level of viciousness and cruelty?
Yeah.
When does your survive? When do we get to a place of abundance and greatness where we don't have to steal from other people and kill other people to take what doesn't belong to us? So I think that's part of the big mystery of when we evolve to that level of consciousness. And to piggyback a little bit off of that idea, one of the biblical concepts that I think felt, jumped out at me when I was watching this episode was one of the Bible quote, sayings that I've heard all my life, and essentially is that it says, "I say to you that anyone who looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery in his heart."
Mm.
Right? So there's, it's been written in different ways, but it says essentially that you shouldn't
Yeah,
look at
that's a good
somebody
one.
in this lustful way because you've already committed adultery, because you're, fawning over somebody and lustfully, playing out these scenarios in your head. And essentially, that's what I felt like I was seeing play out as well in this, right? It was that looking of lust, when he said to Counselor Troy, "You're so beautiful, so fragile," and he started to
Yeah.
go into the process of basically raping her again,
Yeah.
you know,
At least in his own mind too. Even
at least
before that, he was already thinking it. Yeah.
exactly back to that, biblical saying. Um, so yeah, that jumped out at me, and he did a fantastic job of playing the creep and the weirdo. He was even convincing in the moment when he blamed it on his father. There was a moment of like slight redemption there, where you're like, oh, maybe it's me, and I misplaced my judgment against you, and maybe you are innocent, and your father is just setting you up. Because when he um, announces to Picard, "I will have no part of this," that almost left a door of admission to guilt a little bit, right? Because if you're as it played on, and his son eventually made it look like it was him, then when you replay it in your head, oh, he didn't want to be a part of this, maybe because he was really covering up his. And then you start to play back, oh, he also violated other people's memory space in the beginning, opening of this episode. So it was possible that it was the father. And so I thought that was well played as well, as far as the actor making you feel like, no, it wasn't me, it was my dad. Oh, we'll fix him. So that was a good twist there.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to also say, before I forget, I really like watching Jordy LaForge go through his problem solving style.
Yes, I wanted to bring that up too. That was so great because he's using all these big words that we don't understand, but he's doing it in a way, walking us through it to where when they use not psychobabble, technobabble, when they use technobabble, like it's usually just to, oh, and the ship needs to have a thing, and they say the thing, and we don't even really pay attention. But in this case, we could follow along. There was a payoff to it. We understood why they were showing us this, why they were talking it through, because there was something we could follow along and say, aha, with Geordi. And that was really cool.
And I just love the way he acts those moments out when he says, "Computer, what are those samples? And tell me all of this." And just his logic path
Yeah.
is, I just love following it. I love the way he delivers it. To me, it's one of my favorite things to watch, is to see Jordy problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
When he's like, "Well, what about? Well, tell me what if we do this? All right, we'll cross check the references for this, and this." It's amazing to watch. It's up there with like Data and him, especially as a tandem combo. I was like, yeah, these put those two guys in a room and they're gonna figure it out. That's
Yes,
how I feel.
sir. Yes,
That's
sir.
how I feel. Put those two guys in a room, and they will figure out. Data
Put
will
them in
do
a
the
room and get the
yeah.
out of the way
Hey,
until they got it
get out
figured
of the
out.
way. Yeah, just get out of their way. Give them some time. The Data will do the whole, processing, calculating, and doing all the, the big heavy lifting. But Jordy will do the. But what about this? Like he does that.
Mm-hmm.
He always throws a whole like logical wrench into the puzzle to figure out what it is. process of elimination. I love seeing his process of elimination. So yeah, watching Jordy work is also a specialty for me. It's one of my favorite things.
Yeah, so this guy that played Jev, Ben Lemon, he's got the extensive career. This was his only Star Trek episode, though. I always like to check that out. You know, if he was a Cardassian in an episode or something, this was the only one. Also, I believe we had a new doctor, right? Dr. Martin with Beverly Crusher. And I wonder if that just was because Alyssa Ogawa, you know, wasn't available. The lady that plays her, Patty, was not available. So Nurse Ogawa wasn't there because he got lines. It wasn't just like standard, like, you know, here, give me three-quarters in, yes, doctor, that kind of thing. Like, this was an actual character in the episode. So I wonder if they were already going to use an established one like Ogawa, or before that it would have been Dr. Solar. They keep introducing people. So the question is, will we see Dr. Martin again, played by Rick Fitz? I'm going to be honest with you. I don't remember seeing him again. So I don't think so, but I'm going to check right now. He was in an episode of Voyager, it says. So that's interesting. He played Zal in an episode of Voyager. Let me check Next Generation real quick. Come on, big money. There it is. Nope. One episode. We hardly knew you, Dr. Martin, but we're glad you were available.
He made great boots. He was great. It's funny because when I saw Dr. Martin, I was like, "There's a black guy in this episode, and he's a doctor, or he's a nurse, perhaps. I don't know, but he's definitely medical. He's a doctor." Okay, so I was like, "Dr. Martin," and then I thought to myself, "I'm surprised he's not a suspect." Because he's brand new. I haven't seen this guy.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing you at the parties. Where you been?
Where you been? Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't round him up too and say, "Hey, you know, all the new people. It's only you and these Yulians. So, you know, we don't know."
If they did round him up, you know what he'd say? "Damn, Gina!" Right? Dr. Martin.
Martin. Yeah.
However, here's something. We're almost out of time, so it's time for the home run of today's episode. Sirach Lofton, who do you think gets the home run of today's episode?
Yeah, you know, I think the home run goes to this Ben Lemon perv dude, Jeb. He was repulsive.
Yeah.
And I found myself really like wanting him to feel some kind of pain for all of the pain he's causing. So yeah, I was not a big fan of his, but that just goes to show you how well he did the job. I think that, you know, as a guest actor, he carried a lot of the show. He nailed the part that he was supposed to do. But I want to also give a lot of credit to Maria Sirtis, who I thought did a fantastic job of also making this episode, the weight and heaviness of the violation was really also played on her part as well. But this guy is such a creep. He was such a good creep. I have to give him a home run.
Yeah, I think I might lean into Gates McFadden, because Marina, we've seen her perform well, and I like that. And we've seen this before, and we've seen Gates perform well too. But there was a certain aspect, there was a certain vulnerability, there was a certain piece of her acting ability that she showed in this episode that was new and I liked, and it's always great when you see a new little corner of what somebody can do, and she showed us something new, kind of like when she showed the comedy in like the first season when she did the fake trip thing, you know, when she was walking in like the Dixon Hill thing or something, and she's got great physical comedy. But anyway, so this was a new little thing, and I really liked seeing it. There wasn't much to it, but it was just interesting when somebody can show you a little bit more. She's playing herself 10 years ago grieving, That's just a new thing we haven't seen. Anyway, so she was great. Marina obviously was great as well. Here are some other people that are also great. Dr. Anne-Marie Seagull, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackman, Tom TJ, Jackson Bay out in Missouri, Titus Muller, Dr. Muhammad Noor, the aforementioned, Anil O. Palat, Joe Balsarati, Mike Goo, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, a.k.a. Crewman Guy, the Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, Henry Unger, Allison Leach Hyde, Julie Manasfi, Jed Thompson, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, Glenn Iverson, Dave Gregory, Chris Sternett, Greg K. Wickstrom, Cassandra Gerard, Chuck A., Chris Garris, and of course, Jason M. Oken. All right, everybody, stick around. We've got the free-for-all up next, and we will be right back on The Seventh Rule. Hey, everybody, welcome back to The Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton. It is time, finally, for the free-for-all with Melissa Longo.
Hello!
Also, Jason M. Oken, who's got letters behind him.
Hi, everybody.
Allison Leach Hyde wants to fly. Carrie Schwent's got a pretty cool background. Can't wait for that. There's going to be an explanation for sure. The Dark Lord, Chris McGee, has his awesome Cisco family shirt. Love it. Anil O. Palat is in Berlin.
Hello.
Home of Rammstein. I don't know. They're German. I don't know. And the Matt Boardman is here. He's got a rad background too. That's a good one.
Hey.
All right. Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
I'm going to say it was a 7.4.
7.4. The Mark Eaton number everybody knows. Mark Eaton. Does anybody else have any guesses that doesn't already know?
6'5".
6'2".
Gary Payton the second.
Neil's laughing.
All right.
I'm just waiting for the numbers to keep going down.
All right. That sound means one of you have gotten it exactly right. So reach into Matt's pocket to get out a $100 bill. Let me check my notes to make sure that's actually correct. I think it is.
It is indeed.
Okay. It is a 6.2. Chris McGee gets the Sirach Lofton Award of the day.
Wow.
Music.
6'2".
Non-appearance mentions.
Right.
I've got a question for you guys. Ensign Keller. Had we ever seen Ensign Keller before? I don't think so. I don't think we heard from her either. Okay. That just came out. I'm sorry. That was terrible.
It's pretty terrible.
Yeah. Anyway, the point is, so that's not a
Wow.
non-appearance mention, is the point. Did we get, Nam for Luoxana Troy, because she was alluded to. She was not mentioned, but she was alluded to about when she was talking about overbearing parents. Anything else?
What about an appearance non-mentioned?
Yeah. By Jack Crusher.
Yeah.
No.
I don't know. His performance was a little stiff.
Literally dead right now, Matt. All right. Did we have any some kinds of or some sorts of? Anybody? Chris?
Nope.
All right. Fun's over, Melissa. Will you please get us started off on the right track with your cool Picard shirt that you can get at Walking Art made by Melissa? Everybody check it out. Get your very own one because she's got hers. What do you think of this episode?
How do I put this politely? No, it's not a bad episode, but it was a very disturbing and uncomfortable episode with an ick factor of a trillion. I mean, ick. Ugh. That guy Jeff was just ick. Ick. Stay away. Go to some other ship. Ick. Yeah, disturbing, and that's the word that keeps popping into my head. Disturbing, disturbing, disturbing. I'm wondering why it is Troy who seems to be the receiver of rape in some way, shape, or form. I mean, it happened to her in the child when she gave birth to that kid that grew up really quickly. And then in this one again, it's poor Troy. Poor Troy, because she's been through some shizit. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't have a ton to say about this episode just because it was just really uncomfortable. I think it's important to note that it was written by women, and I think that's important because this is a very real topic for women, and it's good that they were the ones to address this kind of topic. So kudos to them for taking a chance and taking a risk on that, because it did its job. It made me very uncomfortable and made me I usually watch these episodes twice, and I dreaded watching it a second time just because it was so uncomfortable to watch.
Did you watch it a second time?
I did.
How was it the second time? Easier to get through, better, worse, grosser?
Well, I found myself being distracted more easily the second time because I knew what was coming.
Mm-hmm.
And so I found unconsciously or subconsciously ways to distract myself from diving too deep into the second rewatch. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Melissa Longo. Great stuff as always. Jason M. Oken, what's up? Tell us some stuff we don't know about this episode like you always do.
Well, the first thing I'll do is I'll repeat what Melissa said. I mean, for me, this is perhaps the most disturbing episode of The Next Generation, probably second to none. It is supposed to be at some level disturbing. Obviously, the subject matter is disturbing. I think, on the one level, it's kudos for them for, if we're kind of taking a swing at this. I think it was somewhat of a swing and a miss at some level, and I'll talk about sort of the details as to why I think that is later. But it certainly is a serious topic, and maybe at some level not suitable for 90s television, certainly family type television. To really tell that kind of a story, you can't really fit it into that sort of realm. They've tried this again in Nemesis, and it didn't work any better than it did here. But what stands out here for me is, frankly, Patrick Stewart's nuanced performance. If you don't pay attention, you may not notice this. But, the dialogue he's given, sort of the nuance in his performance is amazing. If you kind of watch carefully, it's great. I mean, Marina's performance is very good. Again, it's held up by the Regulus performance. So I'll talk about, the other stuff later. But for me, that's what kind of kept the episode. It's not the one that I look forward to watching when I do, and I don't watch it often simply because of the disturbance factor. Could it have been better? Yes. Is it a topic that certainly people should talk about or at least think about? Absolutely. And again, we'll talk about why I think it didn't work as well as it should have and could have worked better later.
That's a really cool hat, by the way, Jason. Create every day, it says. Everybody, create every day. Good one. Great stuff. Thank you very much, Jason M. Oken. All right, Allison Leach Hyde, let's fly. What'd you think of this episode?
So, yeah, this episode has a super high creep factor. It is fairly unpleasant to watch, but I do think the acting is very well done, and so is the story. I love that opening scene with Keiko discovering, what her memory is about her grandmother. It's beautiful to watch that. And side note, this is the only time we ever see Keiko without O'Brien. In both Next Gen and Deep Space Nine. So I also really enjoyed that. Like, she is her own character. She's not just an attachment to O'Brien. So I thought that was nice. And it's a beautiful scene. Just her memory her memory of it and how she's portraying it, I thought is quite lovely to watch. And yeah, did they do some stereotypical things of, oh yeah, of course Beverly's thinking of her first kiss because she apparently is always thinking about romance? I don't think that's true, but I'm like, yeah, let's throw that out there. I'm like, I don't think so. And Riker doesn't want to share, and all of those little things. I'm like, so it's very on brand for all of our characters. I also really like that everyone has something to do in this episode to move the plot forward, to solve the problem. I really enjoyed LeVar's scene where he's talking to the computer. I was like, okay, what are the things that can cause this to happen? Do we have them on the ship? So I thought that was really well written and really well done. And I love that we had another doctor in this episode.
Yeah.
Like, let's have more doctors, because I think it's terrifying that they'd only have one doctor and a bunch of nurses. So, like, because Beverly does need to sleep. And one of my biggest nitpicks, without getting into the over creep factor, is the fact when Geordi and Data come into Beverly's office and she's passed out on her desk, and Data uses his communicator to ask for an emergency medical crew. I'm like, you're in sick bay.
Exactly.
Well, yell. They're right there. So, yeah.
Thought the same.
And was I hearing when Troy was beating up Jev at the end? Yes, I was. And did she use the two-handed punch just like Kirk? Yes, that was also So this is not one I saw a bunch as a kid, because for some reason they didn't put it on daytime syndication. So this one I saw more as an adult. I do think it's quite well done for what they were trying to accomplish. And one thing I really love that the writing staff did is they wrote those scenes, the memories, for all of the main characters, and then they chose. So I really appreciated that as well, and I wanted to throw that out there.
Mm-hmm. Great stuff. Thank you very much, Allison Leach-Hyde. You mentioned terrifying. It's terrifying that Crusher was knocked out for like 8 hours in sick bay, and they had to call doctors there because nobody had set foot in there all day long. Also, that looks like it's a Sci-Fi Sisters shirt. Shout out to the Sci-Fi Sisters. I see it on the sleeve. There it is. Cool. Awesome. Love them.
Yeah.
All right. Carrie Schwent, a.k.a. Crafty Bear. Your thoughts? Oh, snowflakes, maybe.
Exactly. That's what the wardrobe, the jackets that they're wearing looks like those little paper snowflakes that you cut out in art class to cut out the little triangles and shit. Yeah, absolutely. I needed something to focus on for my background, and I focused on that little detail, and I had fun playing around with stickers on my tablet, creating the background. But to get serious for a minute, this episode is another, of course, Deanna Must Suffer. It is getting added to the list. But along with the price, which I talked about before, this is an episode I will never watch again. It hit not the R word part specifically, but just the way Jev was. Sorry, I'm going to get emotional for a second, but that scene with Riker and them and Jev talking, my ex in conversations like that, when you would try to confront him with things, acted the same way, and it got to me. Nana brings up with anxiety a little animal that lives in like the middle of your chest, that when you're anxious starts to scratch in that, and yeah. That anxiety animal was not asleep during this episode, so I will never watch this episode again. Everybody did great. I absolutely needed the comic relief when Worf walks in and with one punch finishes what Deanna started. I needed that laugh desperately. So I'm going to now switch to the things about the episode I did like. And of course, I will start with the guest stars, as I am wont to do. I do all four guest stars I recognize from like one thing on their IMDb. Dr. Martin was in an episode of Voyager called The Year of Hell and some really cool looking makeup. Tarman, the old man, is in a fantastic scene at the end of the pilot episode of the West Wing, when you finally get to see President Bartlett at the end of that episode. And if you've seen that episode, you know the scene I'm talking about. And hands #1 best character intro in television, in my personal opinion. And Jev, the creepo, I know from an episode of True Blood. He's just as creepy in that. But my favorite of the four is Eve Renner, an actress who is still with us, by the way, and will turn 100 years old on September 25th. I think that is so cool. And her most recent IMDb credit was 2019, so she was still acting for like a really, really long time. And I think Ryan will be able to guess what TV show I know her from.
Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman.
Precisely. As soon as I remember her, I'm like, oh, Ryan's gonna know. Yeah, she's in a fantastic episode. This older woman who's sick that decides she wants to climb up to Pikes Peak, and Dr. Mike joins her on that trek. And it's a very cool, very, very moving episode. And before I get to the limerick, I do have a question that I'm going to ask, and things left unsaid that I want everyone to answer, and I have my response to it as well. So I'll ask that later. But the inspiration for the limerick was inspired by Data and Jordy's conversation as they're walking down the hallway about, what things do we remember, what things don't we remember. And my favorite analogy for memory Stephen King uses in his book Dreamcatcher, and it's memories referred to as like a warehouse where you've got shelves with books with files that you store your different kind of memories in. So that's where the limerick that I came up with for the episode comes from, because I was not about to make a limerick about the other thing, obviously. But here we go. The memory warehouse has many shelves, places where we store pieces of ourselves. Some are quite old and dusty, others' screws are now rusty. But to wander through, sometimes we're compelled.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Carrie Schwent, a.k.a. Crafty Bear. Be kind. All right. Chris McGee, the Dark Lord. What's up, Chris? What do you think of this one?
Well, it certainly isn't a favorite. I probably wouldn't choose to watch it on a whim, but nor is it one of the worst I've seen, even in this season. I applaud the writer's desire to explore a horrifying topic like rape in a sci-fi setting, and it definitely is disturbing, as others have said, but portraying that subject is a delicate one, and I think they may have missed the mark a little. I like that we get a little more about Geordi's childhood for the second episode in a row. And I appreciate the very brief callback to our favorite episode, Shades of Grey, when Riker tells a comatose Troy, I think you did that for me once when I was in pretty bad shape. Beverly Crusher's memories of Picard in this episode are a significant moment for anyone who has watched the last Next Generation film, Star Trek Nemesis. But I won't go into that right now, perhaps when and if we review that movie. I also somewhat appreciate the attempt at the end of the second act to mislead the audience into thinking that Tarman was the violator and Jev uncovered the truth when he retrieved Troy's memories. An attempt that was undercut, however, by all the previous dramatic zoom-ins to Jev's leering looks accompanied by ominous music. It never fooled me for a second, and I can't even be sure if that was the intention. And finally, at the end, Ensign Kellogg makes an appearance to help drag Jev away.
Oh,
I do have a nitpick that I'm going to be saving for things left unsaid. So if you aren't, please consider becoming a patron on our Patreon. So the memorable quote to the episode, the one that seems to have stuck with me, is Geordi saying, maybe not every medical facility is as careful as Dr. Crusher.
Very good. There was something in my notes. I was like, I wonder if that's going to be Chris's quote. I don't remember what it is. I'll look for it for Things Left Unsaid. Thank you very much, Chris McGee. Excellent stuff as always. Anil O. Palat, straight from Berlin. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, I don't really like this episode. Like everybody said, it's disturbing. It's hard to watch. All the close-ups are creepy. I mean, also like the story structure to me is kind of weird. We know the mystery at the very beginning, so all the time that like they're trying to figure out who did what, we already know as the audience. So I feel like that time is a little bit maybe wasted. They could have used it for something else. In other words, like, whenever there's like this, we're investigating something and the audience knows, I feel like there's got to be something added to that for us to be kind of invested in the investigation part of it. So I feel like that was kind of lacking. Also, it was very weird the way they conducted the investigation. Seemed kind of odd. Like, hey, let's have these people we all suspect have something to do with all these comas, and then have them try to help us solve it. It seemed kind of like a bad way to figure it out. And then when Creepy Guy did his, he was like blame the other guy. I was like, wait, we're just gonna take his word for it? Like, okay,
Right.
like that seemed kind of silly to me. And I guess the last thing I would say is that I feel like the end of the episode, what Picard said was nice, but it should have really featured Troy, I think, saying something, or should have kind of had a reflection of everything she went through. I think it was really weird that she was kind of didn't have much to say toward the end of the episode. So I feel like it was just kind of disjointed there.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Anil O. Palat, flying in front of the Enterprise D. Thank you so much. The Matt Boardman, what's up? What'd you think of this one? First time?
I wish. No, no, this is it. It's one of those episodes that, like everyone has said, it's very uncomfortable to watch. And I like Star Trek in the sense that it tackles difficult subjects, and this is definitely a difficult subject. Now, I'm used to those stories being done in a more allegorical way. This felt, despite the fact that it wasn't the actual physical act, it was still very much kind of on the nose as to the subject matter. And so I'm wondering if maybe may have been a way to have presented this very delicate subject in a way that that wasn't so on the nose, but at the same time, it is a very serious thing. It is a very serious subject to deal with, and sometimes when you deal with serious subjects, you don't want the message to be missed. So maybe that's why. But I there are aspects of it that I do enjoy, and maybe that discomfort. Not that I enjoy the discomfort, but maybe that is the intention. There is to make you uncomfortable, so that you understand the subject matter better. Like I said, there are some aspects that I do like about this. I think it's interesting for me to the Picard and Beverly when they're going to see Jack's body. And the only reason I like that is because that is kind of a you that look back into a time period that we don't really, we don't ever see. It's, we obviously know that Jack is dead, that they were all friends at one point. We know that Wesley has some pain on it, and despite the fact that it is distorted memories, as a result of a violation here, it's still I think an interesting addition to the tapestry of the character's history. But anyway, like I said, it's an uncomfortable episode, and Anil alluded to it, but I did like the Picard quote at the end where he said, I think no one can deny that the seed of violence remains within each of us. And I think that's a good message, because I think there is a there is a responsibility within each of us to mind our thoughts, as they say, our thoughts lead to our actions. And in this case, we see that thoughts did lead to some very unfortunate actions.
Thank you very much. The Matt Boardman radical shirt made by Melissa. Check that out at walkinart.melissa.com. All right. Jake's final take. Sirach Lofton. The Lakers are playing, but you have final thoughts on this episode.
Yeah. I just, I'm kind of with everybody else about how disturbing it was. You just can't watch something like that without feeling some type of ickiness about it. I'm not the biggest fan of Picard with hair when they do the flashback moments. I just look at it. I'm like, no, this is not working for me. So I'm glad that he doesn't have hair all the time.
All the time.
It's funny because Riker's flashback, he was, I guess, responsible for killing Ensign Keller. So he's Keller's killer. This was weird to me.
We're on fire today.
Yeah. I did like Troy's pink pajama negligee that she wore. I thought it was elegant. It was really well done and had a little trim on the edge of it. I liked it. I'm kind of iffy about the opening scene. I did like to see Keiko O'Brien. I thought she was fantastic. I love seeing her as many times as I could get, especially really getting a chance to do some acting outside of just the naggy wife role that they give her sometimes. So for her to have something outside of that was great. And except the only thing I have is when you're recalling a memory, I don't know. It doesn't seem logical to me that you would be able to recreate the memory and do something outside of what was already taking place. So, for example, how would you be able to taste the liquid if you didn't taste it in the past, in the memory? I mean, when you're recalling it, you couldn't taste it again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
So that to me is like, that was outside of my belief right there. Recalling the memory, seeing the cup, all of those things I get, but doing something that wasn't done in the past just didn't seem like something that was possible to me. And then the last thing I couldn't kind of figure out, why, if he was going to be this violator, Jev, why he would go in through the perspective of Troy as opposed to from Riker. Wouldn't he want to hack into Riker's side of the memory and experience that side of the sensations? I don't understand how that particular memory hacking goes. It seems like he was able to be other characters in somebody else's memory. But my memory comes from my POV, so my feelings, that would be the perspective he would get. I don't see how he would be able to get the Riker perspective from her memory. So that's me in my own little fussy weird trying to put all the logic together. But I also feel like some of the worst episodes of this show have involved to do with the sexual abuse of women, some degree or another. And it goes back to Code of Honor. And they set a precedence of this like narrative that this storyline should be something that is constantly, hammered upon, this rape and this, sexual abuse type. And I just think I'm glad for the fact that we've moved past that being the only storylines for women in television, that they're able to go beyond just being a sexualized character. So, but having said that, I do think there was some sensitivity to the experience because of the fact that the writers majority are women, and so they did treat it with the sensitivity that I think it deserved. That's why it was so disgusting and disturbing for us to watch. So yeah, not my favorite. Not my favorite episode, but there were elements that I did like. I like seeing LaForge problem solve. I think it's one of the best things on this show. Just him, figuring out how to do the Rubik's Cube of whatever that problem is of that episode. He's so good at it. Data was good, not used as much in this episode, but he was good. Just good use of the cast in general. Riker, when he walks up on that Jev guy and he's like, "I'm not accusing you." Like, he's like, "Yo, bro," like the way he interacts with him, I thought that was fantastic because he was starting to pick up something like, I don't think this, he's not acting like an innocent person. There's certain behavior that an innocent person acts. And that guy was covering up and saying, "What do you mean?" And Riker's like, "Yo, bro, it's like natural for me to ask this question. Like, you were the last one to see her. What did you see?" So I thought that was well done on Riker's part. His suspicion, his intuition, you could see it read on his face very well in that performance. So altogether, I did think that Marina Sirtis also did a great job. She was fantastic in this because she conveyed the horror of the moment very well. And so did Dr. Crusher in her horrified state as well. So I thought they both hit home runs for me in their performances. But also the director, which we'll get into on the other side, made some good choices to distinguish the regular day-to-day Star Trek life with the memory manipulation sequences through the cuts and lighting. So I thought he did a pretty good job with that as well. That's my final take.
Awesome. All right. Man, there's still more to talk about with this episode on the other side of this, that's for sure. Wow. All right. Well, thank you very much to the Matt, Anil, Chris, Carrie, Allison, Jason, Melissa, for myself, Sirach, Melissa Longo, Aaron Eisenberg. Thank you all very much for joining us. And until next time, always remember the 7th rule.